Let's dive right in. The rulebooks that built the biggest companies we know, well, they're becoming liabilities. What used to guarantee success is now, believe it or not, leading to failure. So in this explainer, we're going to break down a completely new set of rules, 5 counterintuitive truths you absolutely need to grasp to win today.
And this really gets to the heart of it. What used to be a best practice is now an anchor, just holding businesses back. You see, this whole digital transformation thing isn't just about getting new software. It's a totally new reality. And clinging to those old rules, it's a recipe for disaster.
So this is the question every single leader needs to be asking themselves right now. And yeah, it's a tough one, but it's essential. Are the core assumptions your entire business is built on still valid? Because if they're not, you're not just being inefficient. You're on the fast track to becoming irrelevant. The stakes could not be higher.
So how do you navigate this? Well, you need a new playbook. We're going to walk through 5 new rules that are just critical for success. And they cover everything from who your customer is to your company culture. And we'll wrap it all up with the new mindset that you need to make it all click.
Okay, let's kick things off with rule number 1. Your customer is an algorithm. For decades, marketing was all about winning human hearts and minds. That era, it's over. The new gatekeeper standing between you and your actual customer is, you guessed it, a piece of code. And you can see this shift right here. We've gone from trying to create these deep, emotional connections with people to, well, to satisfying the cold, hard logic of an AI assistant. Think about it. When someone says, "Hey Alexa, order more batteries," it's Alexa's algorithm, not some decades-old brand loyalty that's making the sale. The new game is figuring out how to influence that algorithm. So what's the big takeaway here? It's huge. The trust you might have spent years, even decades, building with your customers can be transferred almost overnight to an AI that just gives them better convenience and value. And this isn't about people being fickle. It's just a rational choice. The practical application here is simple. You have to understand how these AI platforms think and then optimize your entire business to get their recommendation.
Okay, let's jump to our second rule. And this one is going to mess with your head a bit, especially if you come from a traditional business background. Rule number 2, failure is a success metric. I know, it sounds completely backward, but in this new playbook, seeing a lot of failure is actually a sign that you're doing something very, very right.
Get a load of this number, 90%. That is the failure rate for experiments at the incredibly successful company, Booking.com. Now, in a normal company, a number like that would set off alarm bells everywhere. People would panic. But at Booking.com, that's just business as usual. And here's the crazy insight. It's seen as a sign of immense health. So why? Because the goal isn't for every single experiment to be some huge success. The goal is to learn as fast as humanly possible. And these so-called failures aren't mistakes. They are priceless data points that tell you what not to do, which lets your teams pivot on a dime. This chart really shows the secret sauce. It is all about volume. Booking.com runs over 25,000 experiments a year. A typical company, maybe less than 100. At that massive scale, the cost of any one failure is practically zero. But the collective learning you get is just astronomical. It's actually way less risky than making just a few big, slow bets.
All right, on to rule number 3. Data can deceive you. You know, we live in this world that's obsessed with big data. But just because you're data rich doesn't mean you're insight rich. In fact, if you're not careful, it can lead to some unbelievably expensive mistakes. Just ask eBay about their $50 million blunder.
So for years, eBay was pouring over $50 million a year into paid search ads. And if you just looked at the surface, the data looked amazing. Every dashboard, every report told them it was money incredibly well spent. In fact, their return on investment looked absolutely stellar, clocking in at over 697%. I mean, any executive on the planet would look at that number and say, keep going, in fact, spend more. But there was a massive, fundamental flaw in their thinking.
And here is that critical error. They confused correlation with causation. What they saw was simple. People clicked our ads and then they bought stuff. Great. But what was really happening? Well, rigorous testing proved the ads weren't causing the sales at all. The people clicking were mostly existing customers who were going to buy something anyway. The ads were just catching them on their way to the website. That's a $50 million lesson in why you have to test for what's really happening. All right, let's move on to rule number 4. The journey is the product. It used to be that your competitive advantage came from having the best product, right? Well, today, that's just table stakes. The real decisive advantage now belongs to companies who design the most seamless, the most valuable, and frankly, the most irresistible customer journey. I mean, look at this example from Sungevity, a solar panel company. They don't just sell you panels, they sell you this completely effortless experience. You get a letter with a special link, and boom, you instantly see solar panels on your house. Then you get a personalized savings estimate, and you can connect to a real person with a single click. The journey itself is so good, it basically makes you forget to even check out the competition.
So how do companies like that pull it off? Well, it really comes down to mastering 4 interconnected skills. You've got automation, which makes complex things feel simple. Then there's proactive personalization, to know what a customer needs before they do. You need contextual interaction, to give them the right tool at the perfect moment. And finally, a relentless drive for journey innovation, to always be making the experience better.
And that brings us to our 5th and final rule: build an agile orchestra. Look, if you're trying to compete today with a rigid, top-down organizational chart from the 1950s, you've already lost. It is just too slow and way too siloed for the world we live in.
The answer is what's called the orchestrator model. In this world, leaders don't manage boxes and lines on a chart. They conduct an orchestra. They assemble these small, agile, cross-functional teams for specific missions, and they pull the best talent from anywhere in the organization or even outside of it to get the job done right.
And these teams are usually made up of 3 types of talent. You've got your think marketers. These are your data and analytics gurus, the brains of the operation. Then you have your do marketers. They're the creators, the producers, the ones who bring the ideas to life. And finally, your feel marketers, the specialists who handle all the customer engagement. The real magic is mixing and matching the right people for each unique challenge.
This quote from Jeff Bezos just perfectly sums up the whole philosophy. You have a crystal clear, unshakable, long-term vision, but you give your small, agile teams the freedom and the flexibility to figure out the nitty-gritty details of how to actually get there.
So as we start to bring this all together, it becomes pretty obvious that these 5 rules aren't just a list of separate tactics you can pick and choose from. They're all part of a single, massive transformation. It's a completely new way of thinking, a new culture, a new mindset.
So let's just lock in the key takeaways from this new playbook. 1. Stop chasing just hearts and minds, start targeting algorithms. 2. Reframe failure, not as a mistake, but as a high-volume engine for innovation. 3. Don't just trust your data, test everything for causation. 4. Shift your whole focus from just selling products to designing truly amazing journeys. And finally, 5. Tear down those rigid hierarchies and start building agile orchestral teams. In the end, adopting this entire playbook really comes down to this one powerful question from Booking.com's Chief Product Officer. How willing are you to be confronted every day by how wrong you are? That willingness to be proven wrong, to test everything, and to constantly be learning, that is the real secret to success now. Thanks so much for tuning in.